today I wanted to talk about suffering and liberation, two components of the Buddhist philosophy. And I love the Four Noble Truths. And the first noble truth is the truth of suffering, that in life has suffering built into it: disappointment, discomfort, old age, and death. And illness. Sounds like fun, huh? So we do have suffering built into life. I love the parable by the Buddha, and he spoke to his disciples, and he talked about the powerful parable of the two arrows. Now, when we experience physical or emotional pain in life, many times it's like being shot with an arrow, and we feel the pain, the discomfort, the disappointment, the frustration, the discontent or the physical pain of being shot by the first arrow. But he talked about oftentimes we shoot ourselves with another arrow, and that arrow is a result of the mind and how we react unwisely, uncompassionately to the pain. So a lot of times we inflict and make the pain even worse by the reaction of our minds. We hit ourselves with that second arrow by feeling guilt, or we feel self-pity, or we feel anger, or we feel resentment toward the first pain. And so we make the pain worse. And really that's what meditation does. It allows skillful response rather than reaction, unwise reaction to the first arrow, to the pain that we feel. And we feel less pity for ourselves. We feel less anxiety toward ourselves. We feel less stress toward ourselves based on the first arrow that we were hit with. A good example might be we might experience grief or loss in life, or illness. And sometimes we wallow in the illness, or we wallow in the grief, and we hurt ourselves with that second arrow, and we make it worse. And it's funny to say, but meditation lessens the suffering by being skillful in our minds and how we approach the first suffering, the first pain that we feel that was inflicted upon us by life. So that's what meditation does. It allows us to develop this distance, this equanimity, and we skillfully approach the way we suffer in life. And I always like the statement by Eckhart Tolle: suffering is necessary until it isn't. And we realize that we don't need to suffer as much. It's kind of like you get in your car and somebody cuts you off and you give them the bird. And that's a reaction that isn't skillful. It's better to respond and go, what will I inflict upon my emotional and psychological body through anger and anguish and resentment toward that driver? If I could calm down a little bit and approach it with equanimity and poise, then I would be less apt to that suffering. I went canoeing this trip, and I love canoeing because I'm Canadian. And I guess it's part of my Indian, Native American, Native Canadian blood, the Cree. And I remember buying my canoe years ago, and I had the word moksha emblazoned on the bow of the canoe. Moksha is a Hindu word meaning liberation, M-O-K-S-H, moksha. And in all the spiritual traditions, they talk about liberation. In the Christian tradition, it's salvation. In the Hindu tradition, it's moksha. In the Buddhist tradition, it's nirvana, or freedom from the mind. Liberation from the mind, liberation from emotions, from negativity. So meditation is like freedom from some of those negative emotions, but it's also freedom too. Freedom to go into the emotion, to feel the emotion, to expose yourself to the emotion, and you compassionately deal with the emotion. And that's a beautiful thing. And I used to have all these meditation friends, and they were renunciates. And they would go up in a mountain and they would meditate most of the time, and their life would become kind of beige. And they would sit there and meditate, and that's almost like escaping your reality, escaping your emotions. A lot of times meditators will do spiritual bypassing. They'll go and try to get rid of the world. In my view, I don't think that's very healthy. I think it's very important to face your reality and to face your emotions, face life. In fact, I thought of doing that at one time. I was going to be a monk and go up in a mountain and meditate, but then I got married, and my marriage has taught me more than any spiritual tradition could ever do, because I had to face myself. And my wife will also make sure that she keeps me in check. So that's a great thing. You know, you'd be sitting in meditation and you're in your room, and you get a knock on the door, and all of a sudden you yell out, "Can't you see I'm meditating?" And you must realize that skillfully looking at yourself and having the courage to look at yourself, to see the kinds of feelings that you're having and the reactions that you're having, rather than responding to a situation, is compassion, right? It's acceptance and compassion towards yourself. And that's what we all want to do in meditation, is become more compassionate and more accepting of ourselves. And that's a love of yourself and accepting yourself for what is. So suffering is necessary until it isn't. And then you become liberated from the mind and its dysfunction and insanity. And the insane mind, the dysfunctional mind, is what contributes to the collective mind, the collective psychology. And that's why Ramana Maharshi's admonition that your self-realization is the greatest service you can render the world. I love those lines, because working on oneself, it may seem a little narcissistic. However, when you face yourself and look at yourself deeply and clean up yourself, then you can show up in the world. And that's a beautiful approach. Grow up, wake up, show up into the world. That's how we affect the whole. It's like the whole metaphor of the bubble in the ocean. You are a bubble in the ocean, but you're part of the ocean too. And that's how we operate and skillfully meditate and learn to meditate and get better at functioning in the world with less pain and suffering. If you enjoyed this video, why not hit the like button? Subscribe to my channel for more insights into meditation, mindfulness, and personal growth.